Welcome back to Royals Weekly. I am your host, Marcus Mead, and joining me as always, he thought Hans Gruber was the good guy. My brother Mike.
You know, if you look at it the right way, he really was the good guy. He was standing up for capitalism, ladies and gentlemen. And
I thought he was standing against capitalism. He was robbing from the rich to give to the Germans or something. I don't know exactly. It's been a while.
Wasn't he trying to be the rich? I thought he was stealing to be the rich.
But he's stealing from the Nakatomi Corporation. I mean,
hardworking job creators they are.
He's blowing from
hardworking, somewhat American creators. Okay. So
he's killing cokeheads in the boardroom over here. Like, what are we talking about?
Maybe he was the good guy. Who's the limo driver? He's the one who really got it. He was the hero in that movie.
He was the real hero.
You guys are talking about John McClane running around on glass. The hero was Argyle. His name is Argyle.
That's it.
Argyle was the hero of this movie, this film, and nobody sees it. I mean,
nobody's talking about this. This is the hard cutting stuff you get on Royals Weekly. We're also going to talk some baseball, even though there's not that much baseball to talk about. There is some, and so we're stoked about that. On this week's episode, we're going to look back at those first few games of spring training that the Royals have played so far and squeeze every ounce of meaning out of those 3 games that we possibly can. And then we're going to give you a guide to considering spring training baseball. I don't want us to take too much from it. I want to sort of put it in context. And so we're going to talk about the way we watch spring training baseball and what we think can be sort of pulled out and looked up at as like evidence of something happening. And then we're going to look ahead to this week's slate of games. They have 7 games, I think, this next week. We're going to look and see what they're doing in spring training in the week ahead. We want to remind you that if you want more Royals Weekly content, we put out extra episodes every week and stuff like that. All you have to do is subscribe to the Royals Weekly Substack, royalsweekly.substack.com. Right now, we're giving 10% off all annual subscriptions until opening day. So you got until opening day to get a discounted subscription. You'll get 2 extra episodes every week during the season anyway. You'll get 1 extra episode every week during the off season. You'll get 1 written post. You'll get giveaways. You'll get mailbag priority. You get all this stuff. It's a great community. We have a bunch of really smart commentators too. So the comment section under some of our articles is actually really well thought out and reasoned and very nice and polite. It's great. It's a wonderful environment over there. royalsweekly.substack.com. Help us out as much as you can. We really appreciate it. Also help us out by giving us ratings and reviews. I forgot to check for an Apple podcast review. I'll do that real quick. Mike, explain why it's important for them to rate and review us real quick.
Boy, if you rate and review us, it really moves us up that algorithm, helps us weave away into the spotlight against the kind of everydayers who do Royals blogging, who a lot of our friends, a lot of people who do great content out there. But I think we provide a pretty good perspective on the overall aspect of the team for casual fans, for diehard fans, whoever you're looking for. And that helps us get up there so we can reach out to more people, create a larger community, both here and on Substack.
Yeah, we want this kind of discourse everywhere. Mike's trying to be like oxygen, just everywhere, and so if he's got to grow that personal brand, Royals Weekly is brought to you by All in Physical Therapy, who are happy to announce that they now offer strength and conditioning programs for youth athletes who want to gain an edge on the football field, basketball court, or baseball field.
After the Winter Olympics, I'm looking to maximize my glutes. All these athletes are stacked in the back, and I need to be too.
Okay, that makes sense.
I need to be like stacked on my back end.
Not going to win a speed skating gold all flat in the back, And of course, All in Physical Therapy still offers the best in recovery from total joint surgeries and sports injuries with offices in Blue Springs, Lee Summit, and Belton. They'll help you take care of your recently replaced hips, knees, shoulders, elbows, you name it.
I definitely have a shot at a curling medal if I can get some serious back humps. All right. I'm going to be curling's big dumper. All right.
Okay. That makes sense. I've
already carved out that niche for me.
Yeah, he's got the social media accounts ready to go. If you're interested in reaching the peak of your athletic performance or getting back to 100% from an injury, check out All in Physical Therapy at allin-pt.com. That's ALLIN-pt.com, or give them a call at 816-427-5300. That's 816-427-5300.
Really missed out on the opportunity to use the phrase booty meat in that ad.
We're back into our regular rhythm of episodes now, so we're going to start with a review of last week. Luckily, there's no roster news, because if there's roster news in spring training, probably means an injury, and I'm so glad that there's none of that for the Royals so far. But they did go 2-1 in their first 3 games, which brings their overall spring training record to Mike.
2-1.
2-1. Yes, they've played 3 games. It's wonderful. They won their first game against the Rangers, and they won against the Brewers today, and then dropped a game against the Padres yesterday. We saw some hot starts from guys. We saw some not so hot starts from guys. Mike, what's your takeaway from these first 3 games?
My takeaway is who cares? Nobody cares. This is, guys are barely getting in there. It may be a little bit more significance put on it because of the looming exits from the WBC players, but nobody's hurt. I'm not taking anything away from the team as a whole so far. Not even really taking that much away from individual players so far, but good to see them out there. Good to see nobody's been hurt. And to see a couple new faces that I wasn't really expecting much from do some things early on that now I want to take a look at.
Yeah, I think it's, injuries are obviously the biggest thing, and the lack of injuries is key for the Royals, especially since we're seeing injury news other places in the AL Central. We talked about it last week with the Twins losing Pablo Lopez, but also Joe Ryan is now down with some sort of small injury. It's not as bad as originally feared, but the Twins are losing people. The Tigers have already lost some people. It's tougher in the AL Central for some of the other teams. Royals are healthy right now. I think that's the biggest takeaway from the 3 games, but it is interesting to see which guys are starting off hot, who's starting off not so hot, and that sort of thing. I think that's important. Plus, we're getting a look at a few new guys. We want to see that. I like getting a look at a lot of the young guys. There's a young guy I sort of wrote about in the prospect. He's not really a prospect. He's so old at this point and was an undrafted free agent. You really can't call him a prospect, but he's showing some things I think in camp that at least intrigues me from as much as he possibly can. So that's cool. I'm interested to see who the camp standouts will be, and a few guys have sort of raised their hand early on as I might be standing out here during camp. Mike, speaking of that, we need to talk about strong performers. Who was your strong performer for these first 3 games?
Well, my strong performer may have been somebody who wasn't that kind of guy to a lot of people, but he was, to me, he was. He was not a guy that was on my radar when they started a few days ago. I wasn't thinking about him as an important piece or anything like that. Now he's kind of on my radar, and I want to continue to see how he does, and that's Mason Black. I know we traded for Mason Black. We traded Logan Martin, I believe, for Mason Black over the offseason. Probably a relief arm, might be a starter. I don't know what he's going to add to this team, but he came in and really showed out in the outing that he had in day 1. He had 2 innings pitched, 3 hits. Now, one of those is even a phantom hit. It's the old Arizona double. Blanco lost it in the sun. But, I think he did give up a triple, but was able to get out of that with guys on base because of the strikeout. He had 3 strikeouts, gave up 0 runs. Some of that was swing and miss. Some of that was getting guys looking, but the slider looks like a legit offering for Mason Black. And so that's going to be a guy that I really want to – I can't wait till they get to the spring training games we can watch, and I hope he gets in those games because that's the one that I really want to see with the eye test next. StatCast data is great to have, and I like it a lot, but I want to see with my own eyes as well. But Mason Black, you've got my attention.
Yeah, I thought about Black as my strong performer too. He's a guy who – was really the reports are really positive. The data looks really good coming out for him. It'll be interesting to see what it looks like. I'm going with a guy who we've talked about on this show and who needs to have a pretty good camp. He's had a pretty good camp so far, and that's Michael Massey. He's gone 2 for 4 in these first 3 games with a home run, 1 walk, and 0 strikeouts. But what I'm more impressed with is that I've been keeping track of the plate appearances, and he looks like he's making some better swing decisions early on in camp. He doesn't need to be a guy like Isaac Collins who's going to walk 12.5% of the time. He doesn't need to be that kind of thing. In fact, we saw with his 1 home run that launch angle where he's just pulling balls to his pull side in the air wasn't really that hard to hit ball, but it went out because he found that launch angle. It's an Arizona home run. But guess what? During the season, he's going to hit plenty that look similar right over the right field fence in right field at Kauffman or Yankee Stadium or any of these other places that are built to let lefties hit balls out, right? And that's what he needs to do. It doesn't have to be the best approach. It just has to be pretty significantly better than he had last year. And it looks like maybe he's making a step in that direction if he keeps doing what he's been doing. He's got to keep that up. It's got to be a consistent thing from him, but it's better than just not seeing it, which is something I'm going to talk about here in a second. Mike, not thinking just about guys who dominated those first 3 games. Who was your weak performer for this last week?
Well, nobody's plays long enough to dominate early in spring training, but yes, I see what you're saying. My weak performer for the week was Ben Caderna. He, if nobody dominates, you can see some guys implode or explode or something like that. And Cadurna struggled really, the Kansas City native, if you will, on the Kansas side. 1 2/3 innings pitched, 6 hits, 4 earned runs, 2 walks and no strikeouts. They were kind of all over Ben Cadurna. The fielding wasn't great in that game. The free passes hurt him a lot, but yeah, not what you wanted to see from Ben Cadurna. And it's really, I don't want to say it's his first time on the big stage, but he knows now he's in AAA. He's going to get a major league invite. They're looking at him as a depth guy if guys go down or guys get traded. And he's now in his first real opportunities to prove he can pitch in Major League Baseball. So maybe it's the nerves. Maybe it's that. You hope it's that, because the outcomes he had in AAA weren't great last year. And so hopefully he calms down a little bit and does a little bit better than that.
Right. And we talked about Cadurna as a guy who needed to make some improvements, who needed to sort of increase the capacity of some of his arsenal and get a swing and miss pitch in there, or make one of his pitches something that could miss bats. You go look at that pitch data today. It did not look great. And, or yesterday, I should say. And so it's one of those things where I'm keeping my eye out, like, oh, am I going to see, some more movement on one of these pitches? I didn't see any of that yesterday. Hopefully he can, hopefully this is just him warming up, getting into spring. Nobody's at full capacity yet on the mound. And so we'll see what he looks like come 2 or 3 weeks from now, see if he's looking a little better. My week performer for this week is going to maybe disappoint some people. And that's Jack Caglione. His overall numbers look fine. He went 2 for 5. Those are both singles, had 2 strikeouts and 1 walk. But I went and I looked at his pitch charts to see what's he swinging at, what's he not swinging at. And it's not my favorite thing. Not my favorite. I think there are some still pretty poor swing decisions mixed in there. And, you can tell that he's trying to do better. I think that's an important aspect of it, but you see some of the stuff he's swinging at. I'll give you a great example. His first plate appearance of the spring, he swung at the very first pitch. It was I want to say a sinker, well outside the strike zone, 6-8 inches outside the strike zone. He swung at it. Now, did he miss it? Nope. He's got a good hit tool, so he put it in play, weak ground ball. He ends up, I don't know, I can't see it, so I don't know how he ended up getting a single on it, but it's one of those pitches where you're like, hey, you shouldn't be swinging at that pitch ever, right? And yet, there he was, first plate appearance, swinging at that pitch, right? And there are more pitches that were not great decisions on his part. And so hopefully it's all about getting work in, getting comfortable. Hopefully he's getting more comfortable with a new approach, because that's really what he needs, is a new approach.
Yeah, I went and did the exact same thing, actually, that you did. I went through and looked at the swing decisions that he was making so far this spring. And there's a couple of them in there that are encouraging, but there's a couple of them in there that are just vintage, like what we saw pretty much all of last year and what we've seen with guys of his ilk, where you're like, okay, you're in this advantageous situation. You wouldn't swing at anything that isn't premier. And he's swinging at that one on the edge that's down and away, or swinging at that changeup that's down and away when he can't. He did get a walk, I think, in there maybe today, but you were hoping for like a real switch to flip, and that's not what we've seen so far.
Right, which might indicate that it's not really an approach issue as much as it's a pitch recognition issue. He can't tell that that's a changeup coming, and so he swings because it looks like it's down the middle, and then whoop, it's on the outside corner, right? Like there is a difference in those two things. Some guys have good pitch recognition; they're just too aggressive of hitters. You can easily kind of switch their approach. Other guys, they're too aggressive, but also they struggle to recognize pitches, and so I'm sure he's working on that as well. Mike, with so few games, but yet the spring is starting, I'm sure you have a very interesting and uplifting theme for this week.
Oh, it's all uplifting, baby. I'm going to the godfather of the national park system for this one. It's a quote, not a movie quote or a song lyric. It's just a quote from a great American. Actually, I think he might be Scottish. Was he Scottish? I think he might have been born in Scotland. But his name is John Muir. If you've never heard of John Muir, he's the grandfather of the national park system. He was what do we call him? A naturalist, kind of a old woodsman in the late 1800s.
An old-timey explorer.
Of Yosemite National Park. Writer as well, but inventor. But he said, spring work is going on with joyful enthusiasm, is a John Muir quote. And I thought, you know what? That's what's happening right now. Just getting that spring work in, seeing who can hang in the 26, seeing who's still got options, seeing who's improved, who's added stuff to their arsenal, who's made changes mechanically, maybe who didn't do all the things they needed to do in the offseason. We're going to see a lot of that this spring. And then we're going to see a lot of young guys because of those guys leaving for the WBC. So I'm excited for the spring work, John Muir.
Spring work. That's a good name for an album. Maybe
Great
a
biography.
Bruce Springsteen album. Yeah.
Great biography, old John Muir.
I'm going with a classic from one of my favorite films of all time, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, a Gene Wilder song. He sings it while he's doing it, and I'm going to sing it for you because why wouldn't I? It's a very short song. Mike, you know the words. Feel free to join in. Springtime is the only pretty ring time. Birds sing, hey ding, a ling a ling.
Sweet lovers love the spring.
The spring. Okay, I don't know how that's going to come out on the track. Probably very weird, but that's okay. So good. I mean, we both started and stopped at various points, but to me, that's a song of delightful joy.
25 years.
Yeah. It's a delightful film. It's a delightful song about the joys of spring. I'm so happy that spring is here. I mark spring as like when spring training starts, when the game starts. Spring has begun for me. So spring has sprung. Let us rejoice. Mike, what household chores do you refuse to do yourself?
Window cleaning, pressure washing, and most importantly, gutter cleaning.
And why is that?
I'm deathly afraid I'm going to power wash my house into a pile of rubble. There's only 2 settings on a power washer. Okay. Kid sprinkler and hurricane. So you get the wrong one, your house is a pile of rubble.
Yeah. If you're wise like Mike, reach out to the professionals at Window Wolf for all your window cleaning, gutter cleaning, and pressure washing needs. Window Wolf is a locally operated small business with all the professional know-how to keep your feet on the ground and your house or business shining bright. I've known the owner of Window Wolf for years, and I can tell you there's no one more reliable for high-quality service. Plus, Window Wolf is revolutionizing the home maintenance with their new instant price calculator, which gives you a free quote without a home visit or entering a bunch of your personal information. Window Wolf is making the process easy and the price affordable. And for a limited time only, you can get 50% off when you book using their instant price calculator. Just visit windowwolf.com. That's windowwolf.com and use the code Royals50. That's Royals50, no spaces, when using the instant price calculator and save big bucks on quality service.
50% off. That's a reverse tariff.
We're calling that a reverse tariff. It makes it cheaper, which is nice. Be smart. Let the pack handle your pains with Window Wolf. Spring training offers a lot of interesting data to consume. Fans can see some of the games, so there's the visual data of watching players, but there's also statistical data, and thanks to MLB, there's now advanced StatCast data at all spring training facilities. But the spring is also a time for fool's gold. Players can go off in spring training and give fans a false sense of hope. We've had a bunch of those over the course of Royals history. For our Spotlight segment, I thought we might offer our perspective on the best way to watch spring training so that fans can distinguish between that which is real and the dreams that are the things of pipes. Mike, when you watch spring training games, what are the things that you're looking at that you think might have some predictive value?
Oh, I'm going to break it down into some categories here. For the hitters, I'm looking at approach first and foremost, which is the hardest thing to, of course, look at because we only get to see like 4 games in the spring.
Although not super hard now that we get to see pitch charts. That makes it way easier. A little bit easier
with the pitch charts, that sort of stuff. But even then, I want to see the shape of a pitch with whether the guy's choosing to swing, that sort of stuff. So the approach is the thing I like to see the most, and that's the hardest thing to see, of course. Any noticeable changes to hitting mechanics is something I'm looking for, or approach. If there's a noticeable change to approach, like what we saw Michael do last year, with the I'm not swinging at pitches on the outside third unless I have 2 strikes kind of a thing. You saw that early on, and those are kind of the things you want to see from some players. But so that's it for mostly hitters. I'm looking for approach and then changes to hitting mechanics, things like that. For the pitchers, any new pitches or changes to other pitches that you've made, or are you making an emphasis in spring training to look at a certain pitch? If you're Lucas Ursig, is there an emphasis on throwing fastballs early before you go, to the changeup to see what you have there? If it's Noah Cameron, are you working more on the cutter? Or are you working more on the fastball and trying to get swing and miss up in the zone with that? Burger, is there something else other than the slider that you want to use more often to lefties that will help you out? Those are kind of the things I'm looking at there in an overall. But again, it's very difficult to see if you're not actually able to watch the games. But when you do, that's why you and I are glued to the televised spring training games so much, is because you can gather quite a bit of intel, especially if you've been looking at the StatCast data that we have most of the time. And then fielding, I really look for this. I assume if they're putting you in a major league outfield to play outfield to major league level, you meet a certain threshold of athleticism. So I'm not really looking for that in spring training, because I know, Jack Caglianone's not going to be a premier athlete and right, and I understand that. But I'm looking for, how do you play the sun? Because you won't get it any harder than what you're getting it right now in spring training. How do you play the wall? Okay, when do you get into that thing? I watched Aaron Blanco do it quite poorly the other day in left field. And then how do you play a ball in the corner? Because, these guys practice at these stadiums. They play these spring training games at these stadiums. There's, they definitely should know and understand how to play those things. If you're comfortable, if you're in your place and you've worked on those things, that's going to be easy. And I think the rest of it just comes with time in the field.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll look at guys like the routes that they're taking occasionally, if the camera work is good enough to give me a sense of what that is early on. If I'm in person, I can see those routes pretty readily, right? Which is nice. And I will be in person before too long, which is lovely. I'm looking for, like you mentioned, approach, routes to balls, hitting mechanics. How guys are moving, I think, is an underrated one that you can see when the games are televised, because I want to see things like, what does Blake Mitchell look like behind the plate in terms of the quickness for blocking a baseball? Same with Carter Jensen. Like, what are his blocking mechanics looking like this year as opposed to last year, and stuff like that? I think that's some important stuff. How are guys running, I think, is really important, because you think about like Salvador Perez. How's he running? He's 36 years old, and we're not looking for him to be fast, but I need him to run in a way that makes it look like he still has some athleticism in the tank a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And so how guys move, I think, is another important element of this. But those are some of the things that you can get visually when those games are televised.
Speaking of how guys are moving, Blanco, love the guy, but he got basically picked off. Yeah,
I haven't seen any really video. How'd you watch him?
I just saw highlights of the game.
Oh, okay.
I'm a little bit worried about his ability to steal a base anymore. And he's only like 31, but if he's not stealing bases, he cannot make the 26-man roster. That I don't think that's a possibility. So
no,
I worry a little bit that what does he have? Plantar fasciitis or what? I can't remember what it was, but he slowed down just a little bit. I'm not sure he can afford to.
Yeah. Mike, what elements of spring training are you not putting much stock into then?
Power outcomes. You just can't trust them in Arizona. The ball flies there. The fences aren't particularly deep, and the ball just flies there. And guys are, throwing for the first time real life game stuff. So I don't put anything into power outcomes. Late inning pitching success, I got fooled. You and I both did by Eric Sarantola a couple years ago when we were down there. He looked like a friggin' all-star closer against a bunch of nobodies, So you don't be fooled too much by like a box score guy who gets in the eighth against AA players and strikes them all out. I think MacArthur might have had a spring like that a couple of years ago too. So you just not a whole lot of that sort of stuff, but power outcomes, late inning pitching success is always a little dubious.
Right. There's also the thing of like, especially early in spring training, like is a hitter look like he's all over the pitchers? Well, pitchers are like still warming up, still getting to their max velocity, still like they're doing a lot of stuff to get their arms ready. And so if a guy's all over a pitcher down here, that doesn't really register with me even. Like, I'm like, okay, great. It's going to be a lot harder when they're backing up their starters with elite relievers instead of like minor league guys. And they're, guys have got their arms conditioned to go 5, 6 innings as opposed to 2 innings, and stuff like that. It's just going to look way different. So, I think obviously the overall numbers mean very little in spring training. Like a guy comes out and hits, 350, wild. Did he have like 4 choppers that, he bounced off the ground over a third baseman's head? This is Arizona. That can happen. Like, and so,
if you get 3 sun balls, you're an all-star in the Cactus
I
League.
know right now. Yeah. Right now that there are some dudes who look like they're killing it. And so, it's one of those things where the overall numbers really can't be trusted. Speaking of numbers, Mike, when you look at statistics from spring, are there any that could maybe be an indicator of future success?
Yeah, and the fact that we have the StatCast data now does help with that some. If you can get like chase rate kind of stuff, if you can get any information on that, the pitch data is very helpful, I think, for pitchers. The hitting side isn't as helpful, but I think can still be helpful if you dig in deep enough. But if you can get numbers on chase rate and pitches seen per plate appearance, I think can be a really good one for determining, has there been a major change in a guy's approach? Is he seeing more? If there is, you're going to see an uptick in pitches seen per plate appearance. Guys who are overly aggressive don't see 4, 5, 6 pitches per plate appearance, even if it's the spring. And so I think that those can be good indicators. For pitchers, I still look at whip. I'm still a whip guy. And that's mostly because I think the amount of guys you let on base via hit or walk is still something that is part of your characteristic as a pitcher. Whether they come across the plate or not can be a little bit of a variance, and it may be something that involves you and maybe something that doesn't involve you. But I still like whip. I still look at that one pretty heavily. And then if you can get whiff rate, I really like that for pitchers as well in the spring. Just to see, okay, this guy, like I'll be very interested in Ursig's whiff rate and Alex Lang's whiff rate. I'll be interested in those if we can get those. Because I think especially if you're looking for those guys who are traditionally strikeout guys, you want to know that they're in that place by the time you leave Arizona.
Yeah, that makes a little bit of sense. I think, especially for starters, more so than maybe relievers who are going to have a really small sample size and have a better chance of facing minor league talent, minor league hitters. But for the starters, they're going to get mostly major leaguers. They're going to get more innings and more of a sample size on that whiff rate. And so you'll have a better chance of seeing what that might look like. I look for max exit velocity for hitters. Like, it has somebody put some balls in play really hard. And I'll give you a couple examples. Josh Rojas put a ball in play at 107.5 or something like that yesterday, which for context, his max exit velocity last year was 107.8 or something like that. And so if he did it on his very first plate appearance, either he got super lucky and hit like the hardest ball he's going to hit all year in his first plate appearance at spring training, or maybe he's got a little bit more exit velocity in him now. Maybe he trained some with a little more bat speed and stuff like that. So I'm looking for exit velocities. I'll give you another example, actually, especially for the minor league guys who we don't have exit velocity data for, like maybe if they haven't made it to AAA yet, if they're putting up some interesting ones or guys I worried about. There's a prospect the Royals have, not really a prospect. His name is Brett Squires. I talked about him in today's post for the Royals Weekly Substack. He hit a ball 115.8 the other day for a double. That's harder than any ball Salvador Perez has hit in the StatCast era, right? He's a first base prospect for them, and he'll be in AA probably again next year. And he's probably a non-prospect, and it's probably no big deal that he put one in play at 115. But what it says is he has that one crucial element to his game that he can produce that kind of an exit velocity. And that gives you a sense of like, oh, what he could become. That's a potential sort of thing. So I find that interesting. Obviously, I'm looking for any sort of change in movement on pitches, right? Like, that's one of the things that will show up as, did a pitcher work on this pitch or some new pitch in the offseason, right? If he's coming in and he's got much more movement on his slider, if he's throwing his change up a lot harder, like Ryan Bergert is, if he's, there are just different things that can sort of give us stuff from the pitch data that will let us know about what guys have been working on some in the offseason. Speaking of pitchers, Mike, do they get special consideration when we talk about these spring training things? We know that they're often working on things. Under what circumstances can we try to draw meaning from what they're doing during spring training?
No coddling. Okay, you're a competitor. If you're okay getting hit around like Tina Turner in the 70s, then we don't want you. All right, get out there and beat the guy at the plate. That's what I've never quite kind of understand. It's like, oh, I'm really working on this thing. How can you be okay working on something and getting your ass handed to you for an inning or two and being like, I was working on something? I would be either way not okay with that. And so I've always like, yes, they get special circumstances just because it takes them longer to build up. I get that. But, this is not 1954. you train year round, guy. 1-2 starts to work on stuff, and then you're becoming an actual pitcher and a competitor. Get out there and do something, because every game counts. And we used to see it, this maddening thing where the Royals would act like the first 20-30 games of the season were still warming up, still figuring out lineups, still figuring this out, still doing that. It's like, no, get your ass in gear and get ready to go. We're competing, even at spring training, because I think that's something you got to ramp up to too. Honestly, it's not just getting your arm ready. It's not just getting healthy. You got to remember what it is to compete every single day like that.
Yeah, it's tough. And that's a tough mental space to be in, which is why it takes time to ramp up into that mental space as well, right? Like, to me, there's a difference, I think, between what a guy is doing in those first few spring training outings, like you mentioned, and his last few, right? In his last few, I don't want to see him working on stuff out there on the mound. His working on gearing in, working on getting hitters out, working on getting into that space
for 6 innings. Yeah,
exactly. Right. Because that's going to take something out of you that working on stuff in a start didn't take out of you. If you're working on stuff, you're not locked in. If you're working on stuff, you're not getting exhausted out there, like going full tilt like you need to be as a pitcher, right? Like, and so, yeah, I've always been skeptical of the working on stuff narrative, just because what the hell are bullpen sessions for? Right? Like, you're not just limited to throwing during the game. Most of the throw you do in spring training isn't during the game. And so work on stuff then when the lights come on, when people have paid for a ticket, when you're standing in front of a hitter, it's time to get somebody out, right? Like that's sort of how it goes. Royals Weekly is brought to you by Eric Oxter of West USA Realty. Do you have the same fantasy we do, retiring to a land of eternal summer? If so, you need to call Eric Oxter of West USA Realty pronto. He can help you transition to a lovely home in the Phoenix area and a life of fun in the sun.
We could be on the third tee box at TPC Scottsdale right now.
It's 9:40 p.m.
Ready.
It's dark outside.
Let me know.
Eric was one of the top real estate agents in the Phoenix area to end 2024 and all through 2025, because he gives all of his clients a personal experience focused entirely on their needs. With Eric Oxter of West USA Realty, it's not about him. It's about you. He's there to listen to you, work for you, and guide you through the ins and outs of buying and selling in the Phoenix area.
If you're lucky, maybe he'll get you a house next to Steve Nash.
If he still lives in Phoenix, not confirmed on that one.
I've heard he's a wonderful neighbor.
Seems like a wonderful guy. Find Eric Oxter of West USA Realty online at ericoxter.com. That's ERICKAUXIER.com. Or just give him a call or shoot him a text at 480-383-9745. That's 480-383-9745. If you're at all interested in what a life in the Phoenix area might hold, let him make the experience all about you. The Royals continue Cactus League play this week with games against the Cubs, Reds, Mariners, D-backs, A's, and Rockies. I'll be attending the A's and Rockies games with Royals Weekly sponsor and dear friend Eric Oxter of West USA Realty, who we just mentioned. Mike, what are you hoping to see from the Royals during this week of exhibition games? And are you jealous that I'm going to Phoenix to see our friend and watch baseball?
I'm extremely jealous. Yes, I would love to be going. I have a young child, though, who steals all of my vacation day times from me. So I do not get to go down there this year. Very much bummed about it. Thank you for rubbing that in. That's what I needed in my life, to feel just a little bit worse about not getting to go see Eric Oxter. No, what am I looking for? What am I hoping to see this week? I think I would like to get some reports on some of those guys who are leaving for the WBC, just things that they've changed or how things are going, especially the Italy contingent. I'm looking to see as much of them playing and as much reporting on them as I can get. That would be Vinny and Jack Caglione, for those of you who don't know, who are playing for Team Italy in the World Baseball Classic. So I want to hear some things about them. I want to see some more from Jack. I want to see some more from Vinny. I want to see, the great thing is the things I want to see from Vinny are very much easy to see in the StatCast data. The stuff I want to see from Jack, not as much, but hopefully I'll get a chance to kind of figure out some of that and get some reporting there on Jack and how they're feeling about his new approach. But yeah, that's the big one. That's the big thing I'm looking to see this week. The pitching will be interesting as well. But looking mostly for some stuff from the WBC guys, because I'm not going to be able to see them as much, because it's a lot harder to nail down when they're going to be playing and when they actually get to play. So that's tough.
Right. A few more of those games might be televised, but they were going to be televised at weird times, and who knows when they're going to be playing. Who knows if they'll be televised, and who knows what that pitching will look like.
Playing. I mean,
Vinny and
Wonka.
Jack.
Who knows when they're going to throw Lugo?
Right. For
Bobby,
the Italy team, though,
probably their go-to shortstop. I would
shortstop,
imagine.
Yeah. I imagine Vinny and Jack will be starters for that Italy team as well. But I got to see Jack having some better plate appearances, because some of them haven't been great since the start of this spring training. And I want to see that continued progress as he sort of learns what he can and can't swing at the major league level, because if not, it's going to be a rough start to this season. And I don't want the confidence to go the way it did last year. We saw it happen. We saw his confidence take an absolute nosedive, especially after he came back from the IL and was still not doing well. You saw just he became unplayable. They started just not playing him very often towards the end, and you could see it in his body language and everything he was doing out there. And so I want to see some better plate appearances, some more success with that approach, so that it starts reinforcing that this is the right thing for him to do, swing at better pitches. Mike, we should get a chance to see Cole Reagans for the first time this week. That's exciting. What are you hoping to see out of him?
Just health, mostly. Like, just stay healthy. That's it. But, if he's pumping 98, I won't cry or anything. I wouldn't hate to see that. Show me 98 with the great changeup still, and I'm going to be, tickled pink. Command has been an issue, or was an issue for him in Texas. Can sometimes lose it in a start, but it's so early in spring. If his command isn't great, I'm not worried at all. So interested to see what the velocity is. We'll see what the changeup looks like, but it's usually pretty good. Just stay healthy, Cole Reagans.
Yeah, stay healthy will be the big theme for the starting rotation, especially, but really for everybody. That's what I'm interested in. I want to see really that sort of encompasses for me. Does he look like what he looked like when he came back last year? Because when he came back from the IL, he looked like he found like another gear from what he had even been previous to that. He was like torching people. I'm talking 2 strikeouts an inning kind of stuff, which you don't really see from starters anymore. And so it's something that I think we would love to see. We would love to see him have a healthy season, and we would love to see him come out and really. It's tough when you have a pitcher who gets hurt some, but has the type of potential that is Cy Young potential, because you're like, hey, if he can just stay healthy for a long stretch of time, for an entire season, we might be talking about a special kind of pitching season. He can show us that he's ready for it with an outing this week. I'm hoping to see some great things from him. Mike, as you mentioned, the WBC guys, the World Baseball Classic guys, will probably start to leave during the end of the week this next week. We've spoken about our thoughts on guys playing in the WBC and in our midweek episodes during the offseason. But what do you think this will mean for the guys who are still in camp, that a bunch of the guys are going to be leaving?
Yeah, it'll be cool to see some of the guys like, Carter Jensen, some of the guys who aren't going, and some of the younger guys. Carter Jensen, obviously, both you and I are interested in seeing the catching ability and, still what he does with the bat, which is exciting to get started with this year for the full year. Nick Lofton will be interesting. My boy, Stephen Kolek. I like him. Interesting for him to see, is there anything he can do that's a little bit more than what he could do with guys on bases? Maybe to get a little more swing and miss in there for him. For Bergert, is the command going to be as consistent as you want it to be? He did let a couple guys on the other day via walk. Was able to get out of it, though, with, excellent stuff. So hopefully we continue to see that. But the guy I'm really looking at maybe the most is Gavin Cross. Gavin Cross is going to get several more opportunities in right field because Jack's not there. And I think it's important for him. I think it's really important for him to show something. Has improved that, either one, you're able to turn some of that, power potential into game power, and that you're able to strike out, not so much. And, it's going to take that for him to even be some guy you consider as a replacement level option for Major League Baseball. So he should be thanking his lucky stars that Jack Caglione decided to play for Team Italy. I'm also excited for Blake Mitchell to have some opportunities. We've seen him take a couple at bats already this year, but with Salvi gone, he should have at least a little bit more. Luca Tresh will get some of those as well. Some of those opportunities, I would imagine. Who's that other veteran guy they got?
They just signed a guy, a minor league deal for a catcher, because I think Luke Maley left the team for some reason, some personal reasons or something. And so I'm not exactly sure what the catching situation looks like. But yeah, it would increase opportunities for somebody.
Yeah, maybe that means more for Blake Mitchell. I want him to be able to prove that he's healthy and that he's still a top end prospect, and I want to see that in the plate appearances. And when he's not swinging and missing so much, the electricity that used to be in the bat before the hamate injury was elite. I want to see that that's still in there somewhere, and so I'll be excited to see him play as much as possible.
Yeah, I think more about guys who are like fighting for roster spots or fighting to get playing time. Guys like Josh Rojas, who has put some balls in play hard early in camp, can play multiple positions. He's probably fighting Nick Lofton for one of the last two roster spots. Honestly, those two have very similar profiles, and you would think that they would maybe be fighting each other. Lane Thomas, I'd like to see him a little bit more in an outfield rotation with Jack Caglione not playing for going to the WBC. Hopefully we can get a sense of what he can offer and what role he might have, how much playing time he might get. I'd also like to see him in center field because I want to see what that'll look like, him covering ground out there. Obviously, the field in Arizona, not as big as the outfield's going to be in Kansas City, but I still want to see what that might look like. So there are guys further down. You mentioned Lofton. You mentioned I think Bergert and Kolek and Noah Cameron will get a lot of starting pitching time and stuff like that. And I think Bailey Falter is another one. He went out and pitched today. I think he put up 2 scoreless innings today. Didn't look terrible. I'd be interested in him for multiple reasons. One, does he start appealing to another team as like a trade candidate, some team who's suffering some of these spring training pitching injuries, because he doesn't have any more options? And so the Royals maybe not want to keep him in the bullpen as they know they can't send him down, and it just gets a little more complicated. And so it wouldn't shock me if there's trade interest there at some point. So I'm interested to see what those kind of guys what kind of opportunities they'll get with Waka and Lugo both leaving for the WBC. We'll end this week's episode like we end every episode with the Just a Bit Outside segment, where we talk about something that's interesting to us outside the world of baseball. Mike, I know you got a lot going on. You're busy 24/7. So hopefully that yields a pretty interesting life. What do you got for your Just a Bit Outside this week?
I don't know about an interesting life, but I do want to take just a minute to, before I give my Just a Bit Outside, to say just how, I don't want to say devastated, but just how sad I was to hear about the passing of Terrence Gore. Just an absolute tragic story. Passed away after a routine surgery, what seemingly was a routine surgery, in his mid-30s. And he meant a lot to a Royals team, maybe not so much for his play on the field in those playoff runs that they had, but he was always on the team and always a guy that you felt like everybody loved and who loved playing the game. And so, shout out to Terrence Gore for what he did for the team, and, a life cut short way too soon. So my wife and I were talking about him earlier today, so I wanted to say something about Terrence Gore and what he brought to Kansas City and the Royals. But also in a similar vein, tonight I was able to go to a charity event at V's Italian Restaurant in Independence. If you've never been to V's Italian Restaurant, it is an authentic old school neighborhood Italian restaurant that has been in Independence for a very, very long time. And as neighborhood Italian restaurants, or neighborhood restaurants in general, have gone the way of the dodo in the greater Kansas City area, especially outside of the downtown metro area, V's has hung on and thrived because of not only the food that they have, the people who run the place. And I'm fortunate enough to be very close friends with the family that owns it. And tonight they had a charity gathering there I was able to go to with my wife. She's very close with them. And they use that opportunity to buy books to help kids who have lost a family member or a friend, close friend, to help them learn how to grieve, to be that first step in managing grief. And so V's hosts it and, provides food and all that sort of stuff for a large community of people who now reached out, thousands and thousands of books they've been able to give out to young children to help them grieve the loss of a loved one, including in schools when sometimes young children are lost in schools. So just an absolute wonderful restaurant. If you ever get an opportunity, they don't sponsor the show or anything. I just wanted to shout them out because the food is fantastic and they are good human beings, and still holding strong in an industry that's can be tough to get through. So thank you to V's, and go get yourself some good strong Italian food there in Independence at like 40 Highway and Nolan Road.
Yeah, we love a mom and pop. We love a neighborhood restaurant holding in there, making great food for
family
decades.
owned since it was opened by the same family.
So you know that the food in there is amazing, right? If they've hung on this long through all the stuff, it's probably amazing, right? And so we love that they're doing great stuff for the community as well. That's a very important mission there. I will say that yes, I am also saddened. I was also saddened by the loss of Terrence Gore. We mentioned it. I want to say I always forget where I mention things. I dedicated a section to it in a weekly wrap up for our Substack subscribers. So if you're interested, go there, give that a read. That's a very very tragic thing to hear, and a guy who was very, very much a part of the spirit of those 14 and 15 teams, and one of the players who really embodied that spirit, because he was exciting, and every time he stepped on the field, you just felt like something was going to bust. It was wonderful to watch him play. I'm talking about something that I think fits a little bit of some of all this, right? Like, so I mentor students as part of what I do at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And sometimes I mentor students who are doing like a culminating project. And I'm working with one right now, and she and I were sort of going back and forth discussing what she wants this project to be. And as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking about, okay, you're like 20 years old. You have this great idea for this project. And this bit of advice came to me that I've sort of thought about over and over again. And it was like, it's baseball. It's a baseball metaphor. And so I'm including it here, but it's not about baseball. I was like, hey, you're 20 years old. Now's the time to take a big swing. If you're going to take a big swing. Okay. Like don't like go for a single, take a big swing. There are times in your life where it's worth it to try and take a big freaking swing. So she's like, okay, you know what I want to do? I want to make a documentary. And she's going to make a documentary now and sort of go for making a documentary, which she's never done before, but she's going to give it a shot. And she's super smart and driven and all these sort of things. But because she was willing to take a big swing, knowing that like, hey, there are some times in your life where you're going to get that opportunity, take the big swing. Okay. Because it may not pan out. It may be only like 60% success or 70% or whatever, but at least you gave it a shot. You gave something a shot to be a huge win for you. And that's way more important in my mind than like, oh, I hit a nice little single there. I hit a nice little single there. That was good. I'm safe now. Like, you're going to regret not having taken the big swing. You might as well take it because you're going to learn a ton from it. You're going to be better the next time you try it. It's one of those things that I feel like more people need to do. I talk to way too many people, way too many, who have no ambition, who have no passion. Something has beaten the passion out of them, and they're unwilling to take any sort of chance or do any sort of thing. My advice, especially if you're a young person who listens to this show, recognize those moments when a big swing is warranted and take that freaking swing. Make sense?
Hey, I agree. That's the time to screw up. I did plenty of it in my early 20s.
I'm still doing it. I started a podcast 5 years ago. Like what the hell? I started a podcast. I started another business recently. I'm just taking swings all the time because it's fun. If nothing else, it might blaze out in a blaze of glory, but it was fun while it lasted. You know what I'm saying? Apparently Jean-Ralphio Saperstein is my idol. And so I'm following in his footsteps, me and Jean-Ralphio.
That's right. Snake juice on the loose.
Entertainment 720.
That's right.
Anyway, that's all we have for you this week. We'll be back again next week. For our Substack subscribers, we'll be back again on Wednesday. But for everybody else, we'll be back again next Monday. Until then, be good to each other.
And go Royals.